The ethnic compound of Old Tbilisi was multinational. In the houses of Old Tbilisi, there lived families of different nationalities. In the yards of these houses were always heard multilingual speeches. Though people spoke various languages, they enjoyed friendly relations. That was the typical attribute of the yard of Old Tbilisi. By the 20th century, there was a small Assyrian community which was a part of a unique, multinational and multicolored event known as the Yard of Old Tbilisi. Like an old thought, the Yard of Tbilisi is still and quiet. Carpets are on balconies, a water pipe right in the middle of the yard. The yards seem to be born from one another. They are large and tiny, and they are all of the same tribe and the same mode. The Assyrians in Georgia intensely discovered themselves. Here they found favorable conditions for developing fine arts and maintaining their national spirit. The national movement formed in Urmia after World War I, and tragic events in the Ottoman Empire launched in Tbilisi as well.
بتخارنا بابتي قيبة قد إخامي وقو ترسيا ديتا أفان إنا مات السرطوة جادلوا تاما إخامي أكي ريب الشن خميلة تاما خرينا ويلا داوي تركي إي قرداي ويلا مخال كراسيان السوراديين نو أكي السوراديين كل رقلة من تاما قريبة مني بقطالوة ريبة مني بأرخاتي وبراقة بقطاليوة إسامة زودة قاي أرز يال عن أرز دي بياشا يال سور عن قور كل قطيلة إن عن سور يالون ملوشي وجلد بناتي هذا خمرقيلي قد قو أرخا أن قردايتي وبغزائي بنات لليل يالا ليبا بدرايدا هذا بابا دي لينش ما شنوا ليم خامار بصر شنوا لينك جسر شنوا من طامن درق لمن يا جلد بناتهم ولوش.
In the period between 1914 to 1918, the Assyrian nation was on the verge of extinction. A number of diseased refugees suffering from hunger lost their homes, families, and homeland. They scattered throughout the east and west. Many refugees found shelter in Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. Some of them joined their compatriots in Tbilisi. Another part was afforded shelter in cities and villages of Georgia. Thousands of Assyrian refugees from Hakkari region of southeast Turkey headed for various cities of Russia, Europe, and America by way of Tiflis. The National Assyrian Council, established in Tbilisi after the collapse of the Russian Empire, aimed at the national rebirth and restoration of Assyrians' rights in their historical homeland.
Тбилиси, я думаю, что наиболее такой важный момент, который был пусковым, что ли, вот таким.
I think the organization of the Assyrian Socialist Party was the impetus of the national rebirth. Three leaders, Freydun Aturaya, Benjamin Arsanis, and Shlimun Salamas, organized this party and prepared the Assyrian Manifesto. At that time, policy that was formed by these three people was undoubtedly progressive.
Которая была сформирована вот этими тремя людьми, вот это мировоззрение, что ли, она была, конечно, очень передовой, очень прогрессивна.
But the unification of the nation by the refugees who had lost their homes and families, were isolated and in despair, was practically impossible. Many of them were uneducated, did not speak the local language, and in most cases, patriarchal influences ruled their lives, the force that had formed the ideology and mentality of the Assyrian people. The cultural life of Tbilisi Assyrians re-emerged toward the beginning of the 20th century. A stratum of educated individuals sprang up that started publishing an Assyrian language newspaper called Kochva de Madencha, Star of the East. Translations and original books were published. The Assyrian schools, together with the teachers and cultural workers, played a considerable role in the maintenance of the Assyrian language and culture at a time when much of Assyrian cultural life worldwide was in disarray due to the tragic dislocations of World War I. Many leaders of the intelligentsia, however, fell victim to Stalin's repressions. The result was that the cultural educational life of Assyrians in Georgia came to its end. Only in the 1950s, certain efforts towards the restoration of the national cultural activities were made by Assyrians of Tbilisi.
Я считаю, что, конечно, самым выдающимся человеком в этом плане была Ангелина Михайловна Григория, которая еще в 1952 году
Angelina Mikhailovna is the most outstanding figure in the Assyrian cultural life. In 1952, within the period of the Stalin regime, she founded the Assyrian National Dance Ensemble and the National Assyrian Theater. During the period of 1956 to 1957, she staged the first Assyrian performances. General Tamrazov, who was one of the managers of the Caucasus Railway at that time, provided Mikhailovna with the cultural house of his railway employees. In 1957, the Assyrian Dance Ensemble was sent to a modern festival of young students held in Moscow, where they won first prize.
Ангелина Михайловна стал одним из победителей республиканского конкурса и был направлен на Всемирный фестиваль молодежи и студентов в 1957 году, который проходил в Москве. И на этом Всемирном фестивале они стали лауреатами.
Rabbi David Elian, a poet and pedagogue, expert in Assyrian folk, ethnography, and mythology, was author of fables, parables, verses, and poems. Love for his nation and homeland is the main topic of his works. His first poem, Mashalu and Kambar, was published in the newspaper Kochva de Madencha in 1934. Later, small collections of his verses have been published in Tbilisi. Today, years later, his students still remember him with great admiration. Unfortunately, many of his wonderful works remain unfinished and unpublished.
Все его творчество посвящено одной теме. Его любовь к Ассирии, к ассирийскому народу.
All of his works are dedicated to Assyria and its people. David Elian wrote brilliant poetry. His well-known poem, Sadakra, is dedicated to King Manu. Every time I saw him, he was sitting at his corner and writing. He designed all of his books this way. He made his books by hand. At the end of some of his poems, he introduced a dictionary for words that people were not familiar with.
By the end of the 19th century, there were 2 Assyrian settlements in Georgia. Dzveli Kanda, as it is called today, is inhabited with 350 Assyrian families. Kristina Chugianova, the oldest resident of the village, was born in 1916 in Kanda. At the beginning of the 20th century, Kanda was divided in two parts, as Kristina Chugianova was told by her mother. Each of those parts had its separate life. The Assyrian population didn't own land plots at that time, but over time each family was given a land area where their houses were built.
كانت كل تينا لخا ساون دي بابي
شمو داخلة
شمو أيبس أيبس بيرة أيبس بيجن أنا أخون وايدة خمدي مامون أيبس بابي هيدا قلت بابي هم دا أخونو بيرة بعدل أخون وايدة أنا تينا قمت قدامها تعامة ذيك له كل ميشة بدأت ملك كل فينا قيس سول تينا القاخذ مقاخذ طريقنا تينا اللعبة إذا بريمنا من أرد قد كربيتي بريمنا ترسنا بتواي أنا بتخارين بتواي تولن هذا ترسنا بتواي خاقش قيشة ده خاوطة.
The immigrants usually settled in those places that reminded them of their homes, or at least where there was water, the most important element of life. This spring was once found by Assyrian immigrants. It is a memorable site for the villagers and has recently been renovated by Moscow entrepreneurs born in Kanda. Wherever people are and wherever their home is, they make a special corner to praise the Lord. To replace some little-known ruins, Assyrians erected a church named after Zayai. These Assyrian refugees once had a church called Marzai in their homeland. Marezi, Saint Zayai's name day, is celebrated in this church each year on July 14. When it is celebrated at similarly named Assyrian churches throughout the diaspora.